Talk to us about the other diseases that this could cure and what the limits of it are.
Well, okay, so let's talk about the opportunities first, and then we'll talk about the limits. So with CRISPR, we have now a technology that allows rewriting DNA. So it means that when we have diseases that are characterized as stemming from a single defective gene in our cells, we have the technology to make a correction to that sequence. What's hard is getting the editor into the right cells in the body. And so in the case of the sickle cell therapy, it's done in the lab. So those cells from the bone marrow are taken out of the patient, they're edited with CRISPR in the laboratory, and then they're transplanted back into the patient. So it's quite an involved procedure, and it's expensive and it's hard, but it works. And with baby KJ, that was a situation where, because he had a metabolic disease, he could be treated, what we say, the word we use is in vivo. It simply means being able to directly introduce CRISPR into his body, because the editing needed to happen in his liver. And we have a delivery vehicle that takes CRISPR right to the liver. It's called a lipid nanoparticle. And so that technology already exists. What's harder now, and will require additional experimentation and development, is how we get CRISPR into other kinds of tissues, whether it's the heart, the muscle, the brain, the lung. There are many types of diseases that could be treated if we can figure out that delivery strategy.
Biotech has been in a slump. The market doesn't seem to love curing people, and there are obviously many competing interests, insurance companies, big pharma. Why don't investors seem to appreciate the work that you're doing? And what is the message that sends to scientists about whether or not their work is actually valuable?
Well, just like in other fields, I think, biotech goes through cycles. And right now we're in a downturn. We have been there for a bit. And why is that? Well, I think, investors get excited about breakthroughs like CRISPR and other things. And then they realize that, science is hard. It's hard. It's hard to make drugs. It's hard to make drugs that are good and effective and safe. It's a challenging business, and it takes time. You have to be patient. The story with CRISPR, with the sickle cell therapy, I mean, it was 11 years from the date of the first academic publication showing how CRISPR could be used for gene editing to an approved therapeutic. 11 years, and that was lightning fast, right? In our field, lightning fast. So, it just it's just always going to be a process that takes time. Now, maybe AI will help to accelerate that. I hope it does. Mm-hmm. But we all have to just grapple with the fact that, bodies are complicated.
Mm-hmm. Your organization, the Innovative Genomics Institute, is doing so many cool things, and I don't think people necessarily realize how much you actually work very closely with startups that are on some of these paths. You're trying to change the DNA of cows to improve climate change. I mean, all these really cool sort of frontier things. Give us sort of the top 3 coolest things that you're working on that you're most excited about.
Well, I'm trying to change the DNA of cow bacteria, just to be clear. Why are we doing this? Well, those bacteria are doing something very important and very damaging to the environment. They're making a lot of methane, which is one of the most powerful greenhouse gases. And we think we have a CRISPR-based strategy for changing that. We can tweak the metabolism of those bugs and dial down the production of methane, and actually make the food that those cows eat go into more milk and meat. So it's a kind of a win-win for everybody. So we're working on this. It's a partnership with the University of California, Davis. We're very, very proud to have them as an official partner of the Innovative Genomics Institute. And then we're, of course, we're very, very focused on rare diseases, N of 1 diseases, as we discussed with the baby KJ example. That's the first of what I hope will ultimately be many types, such cures. And how are we going to do this? How are we going to scale it? Well, our initial plan is to use philanthropic funding to treat another dozen or so children. We'd like to do that here in California. Mm-hmm. And what we'd like to do in that process is to use those cases as ways to streamline the process, continue working with the FDA. We'd love to ultimately get other medical centers involved so that the whole pipeline for creating these types of therapies is easier. And one thing that will, of course, make that possible and bring down the cost is manufacturing. So that's a key piece of what we're working on right now, is how to reduce the cost of just making the CRISPR molecules. So it's very exciting.